This isn't just tape. This is the proof that will destroy you.
The October wind cut through my jacket like a rusty blade as I wrestled with the engine of my beat-up Ford. 23 years of marriage, and I was still fixing things that should have been replaced a decade ago. Just like everything else in my life. Dad! I looked up from the carburetor to see my daughter Amelia standing in our driveway, her face pale as moonlight. She was clutching something in her trembling hands, a small digital recorder, the kind they use in college journalism classes. What's wrong, sweetheart? I wiped my greasy hands on an old rag, studying her expression. Amelia had always been tough, like her old man. Seeing her shake like this made my stomach clench. I need you to listen to something. Her voice cracked. But first you need to promise me you won't do anything stupid. I almost laughed. Stupid was my middle name, according to my wife Martha. Martha, who was working late again at the accounting firm. Martha, who hadn't looked at me with anything resembling affection in 2 years. Martha, who seemed to find every excuse to avoid coming home. What kind of stupid are we talking about here? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. The kind that destroys families. She pressed the recorder into my palm. It felt warm, like it had been clutched tight for hours. I was at Mom's office today, dropping off her lunch. She forgot it again. Amelia's words came out in a rush. I went to her office, but she wasn't there. Her assistant said she was in the conference room with Rick Donovan from the tax department. Rick Donovan. I knew the name. Martha mentioned him occasionally, always with a little too much enthusiasm. 41 years old, divorced, drove a silver BMW that probably cost more than I made in a year. The conference room door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. At first, I thought they were just working, but then Amelia swallowed hard. I heard Mom laugh. You know that laugh she used to do when you two were happy, before everything went wrong? My chest tightened. I hadn't heard that laugh in years. I should have walked away, Dad. I should have just left the lunch with her assistant and gone back to campus. But something made me stay. Something made me turn on my recorder and press it against the door. The device felt heavier in my hand now, like it contained something toxic. What's on here, Amelia? Just listen to it, Dad. But remember what you promised. No stupid moves. I hadn't promised anything, but I nodded anyway. She turned and walked toward her car, a 10-year-old Honda that I'd helped her buy with money from my struggling auto repair shop. I'm going back to school. I can't be here when you hear it. Amelia, wait. But she was already backing out of the driveway, leaving me standing there with the recorder burning a hole in my palm. I looked at our house, a modest 2-story colonial that we'd bought when times were better. Martha's BMW was gone, of course. She wouldn't be home for hours. Plenty of time to listen to whatever my daughter had captured. I went inside, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat down at the kitchen table. The recorder sat in front of me like a small black bomb. For 20 minutes, I just stared at it. Then I pressed play. At first, there was just muffled conversation. Martha's voice, professional and crisp, discussing quarterly reports and tax implications. Rick's voice, deeper, occasionally interjecting with questions or comments. Normal office stuff. Then the tone changed. You know, Martha, working with you has been the highlight of my career here. Rick, we shouldn't what? Acknowledge that there's something between us? A long pause. I could hear my own heartbeat in the silence. My marriage is complicated. Complicated how? From what you've told me, your husband doesn't appreciate what he has. I gripped the beer bottle tighter. Tom's a good man. We've grown apart. He's always covered in grease, always struggling to keep that shop afloat. Sometimes I feel like I'm carrying the entire family financially. You deserve better than that, Martha. You deserve someone who can match your ambition, someone who understands your world. Another pause. Then I heard something that made my blood freeze, the unmistakable sound of kissing. Rick, we can't do this here. Then where? Your house? Tom's always there, tinkering with something, but he's got that boxing tournament next weekend. He'll be at the gym all day Saturday. Your place, then, Saturday afternoon. Yes. The recording went silent. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. The beer in my hand had gone warm. Outside, the October wind rattled our windows like skeletal fingers. 23 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, a business we'd built together with our own hands and dreams. And she was throwing it away for Rick Donovan and his silver BMW. My phone buzzed. A text from Martha. Working late again. Don't wait up. I almost laughed. The audacity of it was almost impressive. I looked around our kitchen, at the family photos on the refrigerator, at the coffee mug she'd given me last Christmas that said, "World's okayest husband." Even her gifts had been backhanded insults, but I'd taken it all. The condescension, the financial pressure, the growing distance. I told myself it was temporary, that we'd work through it. Now I knew the truth. My phone rang. It was Frank Kowalski, my old boxing coach. "Tommy boy, you coming to the gym tonight? Got some new kids I want you to work with." Frank's gym was the only place I felt like myself anymore. The only place where being tough and blue-collar was an asset, not a liability. "Yeah, Frank, I'll be there." "You sound funny. Everything okay?" I looked at the recorder again. Everything's perfect. After I hung up, I made myself a sandwich and ate it slowly, thinking. Martha wouldn't be home until after 10. That gave me 3 hours to decide what to do with the information my daughter had handed me. The old Tom would have confronted Martha immediately, would have demanded explanations and apologies, would have begged her to choose our family over Rick Donovan. But I wasn't the old Tom anymore. The old Tom was dead. Frank's boxing gym occupied the bottom floor of a converted warehouse on the wrong side of town. The place smelled like sweat, leather, and broken dreams, which made it the most honest place in the city. I'd been coming here for 15 years, ever since I turned 35, and realized I was getting soft around the middle. What started as a fitness routine had become something more important, a place where I could hit things without getting arrested. "You look like heck," Frank said when I walked in. He was in his 60s, built like a fire hydrant, with hands that had seen more fights than a bouncer at a biker bar. "Thanks for the pep talk, coach." "I'm serious, Tommy. You got that look." "What look?" "The look guys get right before they do something that lands them in jail or divorce court." Frank was more perceptive than most people gave him credit for. I wrapped my hands and started working the heavy bag. Each punch carried 23 years of frustration. Each combination was a conversation I'd never had with my wife. Jab, cross, hook. Why wasn't I enough? Jab, jab, cross. When did I become the enemy? Hook, cross, hook. How long has this been going on? After 30 minutes, my knuckles were raw even through the wraps. "Feel better?" Frank asked. "Not really." "Want to talk about it?" I considered telling him everything. Frank had been divorced 3 times. He understood betrayal better than most. But something held me back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was shame. "Just work stuff," I lied. Frank nodded, but his eyes said he wasn't buying it. I stayed at the gym until closing time, then drove home through empty streets. Martha's BMW was in the driveway. The house was dark except for the glow of her laptop in the living room. She looked up when I walked in. Even after everything, she was still beautiful. 45 years old, auburn hair, green eyes that used to look at me like I was worth something. "How was the gym?" she asked, not really caring about the answer. "Good. How was work?" "Busy. We're swamped with the quarterly reports." The lie came so easily. I wondered how many others she'd told me over the years. "I'm going to shower," I said. "Okay, I'll be up in a few minutes." But when I got out of the shower, she was asleep on the couch, her laptop still open. I looked at the screen, a spreadsheet full of numbers that meant nothing to me. Her world, not mine. I went to bed alone like I had most nights for the past 2 years. But this time, I wasn't just lonely. I was planning. Martha left the house at 9 a.m., claiming she needed to run errands before meeting her sister for lunch. She was dressed nicer than usual. A blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she'd worn exactly once before today. "I might be late," she said, kissing my cheek with lips that would soon be kissing Rick Donovan. "Linda wants to go shopping after lunch." Linda was her sister. I'd called Linda the night before, pretending I wanted to plan a surprise for Martha's birthday. Linda had no idea about any lunch plans. "Have fun," I said. After she left, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and thinking about the next few hours. Martha and Rick thought they were so clever, so careful. They had no idea that Martha's own daughter had handed me the keys to their secret. At noon, I drove to Rick's neighborhood. Rick Donovan lived in Maple Heights, a development full of cookie-cutter McMansions that screamed, "I make more money than you." His house was a brick colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. The silver BMW was parked in the driveway next to Martha's car. I parked down the street and waited. At 12:47 p.m., I watched my wife of 23 years walk out of another man's house, smoothing down her dress and checking her hair and her phone's camera. She looked satisfied, happy even. I'd seen enough. But instead of driving home, I went to the hardware store. Sunday morning, Martha was unusually cheerful. She hummed while making coffee, smiled at me over breakfast, even asked about my plans for the day. Guilt, I realized. She was overcompensating. I was thinking we could do something together today, she said. Maybe drive up to the lake like we used to. Like we used to. Before her career took off, before I became an embarrassment, before Rick Donovan. That sounds nice, I said, but I promised Frank I'd help him move some equipment at the gym. Relief flashed across her face so quickly I almost missed it. Oh, well, maybe next weekend. Sure. I did go to Frank's gym, but not to move equipment. I went to think. You're distracted today, Frank observed as I worked the speed bag with no rhythm or focus. Just tired. Tommy, I've known you for 15 years. You want to tell me what's really going on? I stopped punching and looked at him. Frank had been like a father to me, more supportive than my own dad had ever been. He deserved the truth. If you found out someone you trusted was betraying you, what would you do? Frank's expression grew serious. Depends on the betrayal. The worst kind. Your wife? I nodded. Frank sighed and sat down on a nearby bench. I've been down that road 3 times, son. Each time I handled it different. What worked? None of it worked. That's why I've been divorced 3 times. He looked at me with tired eyes. But I learned something from each disaster. You want to know what? Yeah. The first time I got angry and did something stupid, ended up in jail for a night and lost half my stuff in the divorce. The second time I tried to ignore it and work things out. She kept cheating and I kept pretending I didn't know. Made me crazy. The third time, what happened the third time? The third time I got smart. I documented everything, built a case. When I finally confronted her, I had all the evidence I needed. She couldn't lie her way out of it, couldn't make me look like the bad guy, and couldn't take me to the cleaners in court. Did it make you feel better? Frank thought about that for a long moment. It made me feel like I had some control back, and sometimes that's the best you can hope for. Control. That was what I'd lost somewhere along the way. When had I become the kind of man who accepted scraps of attention from his own wife? When had I started apologizing for who I was? Thanks, Frank. What are you going to do? I'm going to get smart. That evening, I started documenting everything. Times, dates, phone calls, text messages. I set up a small digital camera in our bedroom, hidden behind some books on Martha's dresser. I installed software on our shared computer that would track her online activity. It felt dirty, but not as dirty as what she was doing to our family. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered evidence, photos of her car at Rick's house, screenshots of flirty text messages, credit card receipts from restaurants I'd never been to. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal, kissing her goodnight, making small talk over breakfast, acting like I didn't know she was living a double life. But I was getting good at acting. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. I was having dinner with my 2 closest friends, Mike Peterson and Dave Chen, at O'Malley's bar downtown. We'd been meeting there every other Thursday for 8 years, a tradition that had survived job changes, family drama, and Dave's brief midlife crisis involving a motorcycle and a 25-year-old waitress. Mike owned a small construction company. Dave was an insurance adjuster. Both were solid, dependable guys who'd been through their own marital struggles. You look like heck, Tom, Mike said, echoing Frank's observation from weeks earlier. Thanks, you're the second person to tell me that recently. Seriously, what's going on? You've been weird for weeks. I took a long drink of my beer and made a decision. These were my friends. If I couldn't trust them, who could I trust? Martha's having an affair. The words hung in the air like smoke. Dave nearly choked on his beer. What? Are you sure? I'm sure. Mike leaned forward. How do you know? I told them about the recording, about following Martha to Rick's house, about the evidence I'd been collecting. I expected sympathy, support, outrage on my behalf. What I got was silence. Finally, Dave spoke up. Tom, maybe you should think about this differently. What do you mean? I mean, maybe this is a wake-up call. Maybe Martha's trying to tell you something about your marriage. I stared at him. She's trying to tell me something by sleeping with another man? Look, I'm not defending what she's doing, Mike said. But you have to admit, you two have been having problems for years. Maybe, instead of spying on her, you should try talking to her. Talking to her? About what you both need, about how to fix things. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She's cheating on me, Mike. She's lying to my face every day. And you think I should ask her what she needs? Dave shifted uncomfortably. It's just, marriage is complicated, Tom. Sometimes people make mistakes when they're unhappy. Mistakes? Poor choice of words. I just meant, no, I know what you meant. I stood up, throwing a 20 on the table. You meant that somehow this is my fault, that I drove her to it. That's not what we're saying, Mike protested. Isn't it? Poor Tom, with his failing business and his blue-collar job, no wonder his successful wife went looking for something better. Tom, sit down. Let's talk about this. But I was already walking away. Tom, Dave called after me. Don't do anything stupid. There was that word again. Stupid. I drove home in a rage, but not at Martha, at my friends, at the people who were supposed to have my back. When I got home, Martha was in the living room watching TV. You're home early, she said. How were Mike and Dave? Fine. You look upset. Did something happen? The concern in her voice might have been genuine. It was hard to tell anymore. Just tired. Come sit with me. We never just sit together anymore. So I sat next to my cheating wife on our couch and pretended to watch a romantic comedy while she texted with her lover. The irony was suffocating. The next Thursday, Mike called to see if I was coming to O'Malley's. I don't think so, I said. Come on, Tom. We need to talk about what happened last week. What's to talk about? You made your position clear. We're your friends. We're worried about you. Friends. Right. But something in Mike's tone made me reconsider. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe they were just trying to help in their own misguided way. Fine, but I'm not discussing Martha. Fair enough. I met them at our usual table. The atmosphere was tense from the moment I sat down. Look, Tom, Dave started, we've been thinking about what you told us last week. I thought we weren't discussing that. Just hear us out, Mike said. We talked to our wives about the situation. You did what? We didn't use names or anything. We just described the situation hypothetically. I felt my face getting hot. You discussed my marriage with your wives? And they both said the same thing, Dave continued, ignoring my question. They said that when a woman strays, it's usually because she's not getting something she needs at home. So, this is my fault. Nobody's saying it's your fault, Mike said. But maybe you need to look at your role in this. My role? When's the last time you took Martha out somewhere nice? When's the last time you bought her flowers or planned a romantic evening? I stared at him. When's the last time she acted like she wanted any of those things from me? Maybe she stopped asking because she got tired of being disappointed. The words hit me like a physical blow. Wow, I said quietly. You really think this is on me? We think marriage takes two people, Dave said. And maybe, if you put as much energy into winning your wife back as you're putting into spying on her, you might actually save your marriage. Instead of destroying it, Mike added. I looked at these two men I'd considered my closest friends. Men I'd helped move houses, men I'd lent money to, men I'd trusted with my deepest concerns. Let me ask you something, I said. If you came to me and told me your wife was cheating, what would you want me to say? They exchanged glances. We'd want you to help us figure out how to fix things, Dave said. Not how to get revenge, Mike added. Revenge. There was a word I hadn't used, even in my own head. So if I told you that Susan was sleeping with her boss, I said to Mike, you'd want me to suggest couples counseling? Mike's face darkened. That's different. How? Because Susan would never... He stopped himself. Because Susan would never what? Cheat on you? What makes you so special, Mike? What makes you so much better than me that your wife would never look elsewhere? That's not what I meant. Sure it is. You think I deserve this. You think I'm such a lousy husband that of course Martha went looking for something better? Tom, calm down, Dave said. Don't tell me to calm down. You know what I think? I think you're both so terrified that your own wives might cheat that you need to believe it's something the husband brings on himself. Because if it can happen to a good guy for no reason, then it can happen to you too. I stood up again, but this time I wasn't walking away. And you know what else? I think you're jealous. Jealous? Mike laughed. Of what? Of the fact that my wife makes more money than I do. Of the fact that she's successful and ambitious. You've both made little comments over the years about how I married up. Well, guess what? Marrying up doesn't make you immune to betrayal. It just makes people like you think you deserve it when it happens. The bar had gotten quieter. Other patrons were starting to stare. Tom, sit down, Dave hissed. You're making a scene. Am I? Good. I'm tired of keeping quiet about things that matter. You're drunk, Mike said. I've had 2 beers. I'm not drunk. I'm just done pretending that my friends actually give a care about me. Of course we care about you, Dave said. That's why we're trying to help. This isn't help. This is victim blaming wrapped up in concern trolling. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Here's what real friends would do. Real friends would be outraged on my behalf. Real friends would offer to help me figure out my next move. Real friends wouldn't immediately assume I deserved to be betrayed by the person I trusted most. Mike's face was red now. You want to know what real friends do? Real friends tell you the truth even when you don't want to hear it. And the truth is, you've been checked out of your marriage for years. You've been coasting, taking Martha for granted, and now you're surprised that she found someone who appreciates her? The words hung between us like a challenge. There it is, I said quietly. The truth comes out. You do think I deserve this. I think you contributed to it, Mike said. And I think instead of playing victim, you should take some responsibility. Something snapped inside me. Responsibility? You want to talk about responsibility? I've worked 60-hour weeks for 20 years to build a business that supports my family. I've never cheated, never lied, never made my wife feel like she wasn't enough. But somehow, when she decides to throw away our marriage for a guy with a BMW, it's my fault for not buying enough flowers? My voice was getting louder again. You know what your problem is? Both of you? You're so whipped by your own wives that you can't imagine a world where a woman might actually be wrong, where a woman might be selfish and cruel and destructive. So when faced with evidence that women are just as capable of betrayal as men, you have to find a way to make it the man's fault. That's enough, Dave said, standing up. Is it? Because I'm just getting started. You want to know about taking responsibility? How about Martha takes responsibility for making vows she didn't intend to keep? How about she takes responsibility for lying to my face every day? How about she takes responsibility for destroying our children's sense of family? You're out of line, Mike said. Am I? Or am I finally drawing some lines of my own? I looked at both of them, these men I'd considered brothers, and felt something die inside my chest. You know what? You're right about one thing. I have been checked out. I've been sleepwalking through my life, accepting scraps of affection, apologizing for taking up space in my own house. But that ends now. I threw another 20 on the table. Thanks for opening my eyes, guys, about a lot of things. Tom, don't leave like this, Dave called as I walked away. But I was already gone. After the confrontation with Mike and Dave, something crystallized in my mind. I'd been approaching this all wrong. I'd been thinking like a victim, like someone who needed to prove his case to a jury of people who'd already decided he was guilty, but I wasn't on trial. Martha was. I spent the weekend refining my strategy. No more gathering evidence for some imaginary court case. No more hoping for sympathy from friends who'd rather blame me than face the possibility that betrayal could happen to anyone. This was about consequences. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Martha's office building. I parked across the street and watched the parking garage. At 11:30 a.m., Martha's BMW pulled out, followed closely by Rick's silver sedan. I followed them to the Marriott downtown. They spent 2 hours there. While they were inside, I called Martha's direct line at work. Martha Brennan's office, this is Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer, this is Tom, Martha's husband. Is she available? Oh, hi, Mr. Brennan. I'm sorry, but Martha's in meetings all afternoon. Can I take a message? No message, thanks. So Martha's assistant was covering for her. How many people were complicit in this betrayal? That evening, Martha came home with shopping bags from an expensive boutique. What's the occasion? I asked. No occasion. I just saw some things I liked. New lingerie, probably. For Rick? How was work? Busy. Meetings all day. The lie came so easily. I wondered if she even felt guilty anymore. That night, after Martha fell asleep, I went through her phone. She'd gotten careless, or maybe she just didn't think I was smart enough to figure out her password. It was Rick's birthday. The text messages were explicit, detailed. They talked about me like I was an obstacle to be managed, a problem to be solved. Tom's getting suspicious, Martha had written the day before. Maybe it's time to tell him, Rick had replied. Not yet. I need to figure out the finances first, and Amelia's still in school. I'm tired of sneaking around. I want to be with you properly. Soon, I promise, soon. They were planning to end our marriage, but on their timeline, when it was convenient for them. I took screenshots of everything. The next morning, Martha was unusually affectionate. She made my favorite breakfast, kissed me goodbye, even suggested we plan a weekend getaway. That sounds nice, I said. Where were you thinking? Maybe that bed and breakfast in Vermont we went to for our anniversary a few years ago? The one where we'd had our last genuinely good weekend together. She wanted to take me there to break up with me, I realized, to soften the blow with nostalgia. Let me check my schedule, I said. After she left, I called the bed and breakfast. They had no reservation under our name, but they did have one under Rick Donovan's name for the following weekend. The audacity was breathtaking. I decided it was time to involve my son Ross. Unlike his sister, Ross had always been a pragmatist. He worked in IT for a tech company in Boston and had inherited my suspicious nature along with Martha's analytical mind. I called him that evening. Dad, is everything okay? You never call during the week. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Have you noticed anything different about your mother lately? When you talk to her on the phone or when you visited? A long pause. Why are you asking? Just answer the question, Ross. Another pause. She seems happier, I guess, more energetic. She talks about work a lot more than she used to. Does she mention anyone specific at work? There's some guy named Rick she talks about sometimes. She says he's really smart, really ambitious. Why? So she'd been talking about Rick to our son, building the narrative, preparing the ground. Ross, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your mother is having an affair with Rick. Silence. Dad, are you sure? I mean, Mom would never... She would. She is. I have proof. I told him about the recording, the surveillance, the text messages. Unlike my so-called friends, Ross listened without judgment. Jesus, Dad, I'm so sorry. I need to ask you something else. When your mother talks about me to you, what does she say? Ross hesitated. Dad, I don't think... I need to know. She worries about you, about the business, about your health. She says you've been distant lately, that you don't seem happy. Does she say it's her fault? No, she says she thinks you're going through some kind of midlife crisis, that maybe you need counseling or something. So that was her narrative. Poor Martha, dealing with her unstable husband's midlife crisis while finding comfort in the arms of a colleague. When she finally left me, everyone would understand. They'd probably applaud her for staying as long as she did. What are you going to do, Dad? I'm going to end this, but I'm going to do it right. What does that mean? It means your mother thinks she's in control of this situation. She thinks she gets to decide when and how our marriage ends. She's wrong. Dad, please don't do anything that's going to make this worse. Worse for who? For everyone. For you, for Mom, for me and Amelia. Ross, your mother has already made it worse. I'm just going to make sure she doesn't get to control the narrative anymore. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about the conversation. Even my own son was worried about what I might do. Everyone seemed to think I was the unstable one, the wild card who might do something destructive. They were right to worry, but not for the reasons they thought. Friday afternoon, I called Martha at work. Hi, honey, she said, sounding surprised. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to that boxing tournament in Springfield this weekend, the one Frank's been talking about. Oh, right. I'd forgotten about that. She hadn't forgotten. She was counting on it. I'll probably leave early Saturday morning and won't be back until Sunday evening. Will you be okay on your own? Of course. I'll probably just have a quiet weekend, maybe catch up on some reading. Reading, right. Sounds perfect. I love you. Love you too. The words felt like ashes in my mouth. Saturday morning, I made a big show of loading my gym bag into the truck and kissing Martha goodbye. I even called out, "See you Sunday," as I drove away. But instead of heading to Springfield, I drove to a motel on the other side of town and checked in under a fake name. Then I settled in to wait. At 2:17 p.m., Rick's BMW pulled into my driveway. At 2:23 p.m., I watched through binoculars as my wife opened our front door wearing a silk robe I'd never seen before. They didn't even bother to close the curtains. I took photos, lots of them. At 4:45 p.m., I drove home. I parked at the end of our street and walked through our backyard, using the spare key hidden under the garden gnome that Martha had always thought was tacky. I could hear them upstairs in our bedroom. In our bed. Moving quietly, I retrieved the digital camera I'd hidden weeks earlier. It had captured everything. Then I went back to the motel and waited. At 7:30 p.m., Rick's BMW left my driveway. At 8:15 p.m., I came home. Martha was in the kitchen cooking dinner and humming. She'd showered and changed into jeans and a sweater. She looked relaxed, satisfied. "You're home early," she said, kissing my cheek. "Tournament was canceled. Some problem with the venue." "Oh, that's too bad, but I'm glad you're home. I missed you." She'd missed me. After spending the afternoon in bed with another man, she'd missed me. "I missed you too," I said. "We had dinner together. We watched a movie, we went to bed, and she curled up against me like she used to when we were young. It was the best night we'd had in months, and it was all built on a lie." Monday morning, I called in sick again. This time, I had work to do. First, I made copies of everything. Photos, videos, text messages, financial records. I stored copies in multiple locations, safe deposit box, cloud storage with my lawyer. Then I started making phone calls. The first call was to Martha's boss, Mr. Hendricks. "Mr. Hendricks, this is Tom Brennan, Martha's husband." "Tom, how are you? Martha speaks of you often." "I bet she does." "I'm calling because I need to discuss a sensitive matter regarding Martha and Rick Donovan." Silence. "What kind of matter?" "The kind that could expose your company to maltreatment lawsuits if it's not handled properly." "I think you'd better come in." The second call was to Rick's ex-wife, Linda. I'd found her number in the divorce records, which were public information. "Linda, you don't know me, but I'm Tom Brennan. My wife is having an affair with your ex-husband." "Oh, honey," she said immediately. "I'm so sorry." "You don't sound surprised. Rick cheated on me too. With a coworker, it's his pattern. Would you be willing to talk to my wife about what she can expect from Rick long-term?" "Absolutely. That bastard destroyed our family. If I can save yours, I'm happy to help." The third call was to my lawyer. "Tom, I've been expecting your call. Ross filled me in on the situation. I want to file for divorce, and I want to make sure Martha doesn't get to spin this as some kind of mutual decision. With the evidence you've gathered, that shouldn't be a problem. But Tom, are you sure you want to go nuclear on this? Sometimes it's better to try mediation first. She had her chance to handle this quietly. She chose to humiliate me instead. All right then, let's discuss strategy." By Wednesday, everything was in place. Thursday evening, I suggested we go out to dinner. "Somewhere nice," I said, "to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" Martha asked. "Us. It feels like we're finally getting back on track." She smiled, but there was something uncertain in her eyes. I made reservations at Chez Laurent, the fanciest restaurant in town. The kind of place Martha loved, but we rarely went to because of the expense. "This is lovely," she said as we were seated. "But what's the occasion really? Can a man take his wife out for a nice dinner?" "Of course. It's just, you've been different lately. Happier. I've been thinking about our marriage, about what I want from it." "And what do you want?" I looked across the table at this woman I'd loved for 23 years. This woman who'd shared my bed while planning to leave me. This woman who'd let me make a fool of myself while she and her lover laughed at my ignorance. "I want honesty," I said. Something flickered in her eyes. "Honesty? Complete honesty. No more secrets, no more lies, no more pretending." Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine glass. "Tom, what are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table between us. "I'm talking about Rick Donovan." The color drained from her face. "I'm talking about the Marriott. About Saturday afternoons when I'm supposedly at the gym. About the text messages and the photos and the plans you've been making behind my back. Tom, I'm talking about 23 years of marriage that you threw away for a man who's already destroyed one family and will eventually destroy yours too." Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "How long have you known?" "Long enough." "What are you going to do?" I signaled the waiter for the check. "I'm going to give you what you want, Martha. Your freedom. But I'm going to do it on my terms, not yours." "What does that mean?" "It means you don't get to control the narrative anymore. You don't get to paint me as the problem. You don't get to make this about my shortcomings or your needs or the state of our marriage." I stood up and dropped cash on the table. "It means everyone's going to know exactly what kind of person you are. Tom, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can't do anything, Martha. There is no we anymore. You made sure of that." I walked away, leaving her crying at the table. When I got home, I found Rick's BMW in my driveway. He was waiting for me in my living room. "We need to talk," he said. No, I said, we really don't. Martha told me what happened at dinner. This doesn't have to get ugly, Tom. It's already ugly, Rick. You made it ugly when you decided to sleep with my wife in my bed. Look, I know you're hurt. Do you? Do you know what it's like to have your life destroyed by someone you trusted? Someone you loved? Rick stood up. He was taller than me, probably stronger, but I'd been training at Frank's gym for 15 years and I was running on pure rage. I know this is difficult, he said, but Martha and I, what we have is real. We didn't plan for this to happen. You didn't plan to fall in love. How romantic. Did you plan to humiliate me? Did you plan to destroy my children's family? Or was that just a happy accident? The kids will be fine. Kids are resilient. That's when I hit him. Not a wild, emotional swing, but a clean, technical combination that Frank would have been proud of. Jab to the solar plexus, cross to the jaw, hook to the ribs. Rick went down hard. Get out of my house, I said, and don't come back. He struggled to his feet, holding his jaw. You're crazy, he said. Maybe, but I'm not a coward who sneaks around behind people's backs. After he left, I called Martha. Your boyfriend just left my house. If either of you come here again, I'm calling the police. Tom, we need to talk about this like adults. Adults don't cheat on their spouses, Martha. Adults don't lie to their children. Adults don't destroy families for their own selfish desires. You hit Rick. Rick was in my house uninvited. I defended my property. This isn't you, Tom. This isn't who you are. You're right. The old Tom would have begged you to come back. The old Tom would have blamed himself for your choices. But the old Tom is dead, Martha. You killed him. I hung up. The next morning, I drove to Martha's office building. I'd called ahead and confirmed that both she and Rick were in meetings, separate meetings, in different parts of the building. I went to see Mr. Hendricks. Tom, thank you for coming in. This is a very delicate situation. It's about to become less delicate. I showed him the photos, the text messages, the evidence of Martha and Rick's affair. They've been using company time and resources to conduct their relationship. They've been lying to colleagues and clients, and they've put your company at risk of maltreatment claims. Mr. Hendricks studied the evidence with growing alarm. What do you want me to do about this? I want you to fire them both. Today. Tom, I understand you're angry, but Mr. Hendricks, let me explain something to you. In about an hour, I'm going to start showing this evidence to people. Lots of people. Martha's colleagues, Rick's friends, our neighbors, our children's teachers. Everyone who knows us is going to know what they did. I leaned forward. Now, you can be part of the solution by taking appropriate action against employees who violated company policy. Or you can be part of the problem by protecting them. But either way, this story is coming out. Mr. Hendricks sighed. I'll need to consult with HR and legal. You have 2 hours. My next stop was the country club where Martha and I were members. I found the club president, Mrs. Morrison, having lunch on the terrace. Tom, how lovely to see you. How's Martha? That's actually what I wanted to discuss with you. I showed her selected photos, nothing explicit, just Martha and Rick together in compromising situations. I'm afraid Martha won't be able to continue her volunteer work with the charity auction this year. She's been rather busy with other activities. Mrs. Morrison's eyes widened as she realized what she was looking at. Oh my! I thought you should know, given that she's been representing the club at various functions. Yes, of course. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. The gossip network at the country club was more efficient than the internet. By evening, everyone would know. My third stop was Rick's apartment complex. I found the building manager and showed him photos of Rick's BMW in my driveway during hours when Rick was supposed to be at work. I thought you should know that one of your tenants has been falsifying his employment records. He's been claiming to work full-time while actually spending his days at my house, sleeping with my wife. That's not really a building management issue, mister? Brennan. And it becomes a building management issue when he starts bringing his married girlfriend here for their afternoon encounters. Some of your other tenants have complained about the noise. That was a lie, but the building manager didn't know that. I'll look into it. I'm sure you will. By the time I got home, my phone was ringing constantly. Martha, Rick, Mr. Hendricks, various friends and neighbors who'd heard different versions of the story. I didn't answer any of the calls. Instead, I sat in my kitchen and opened a beer. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The next morning, Martha showed up at my house. She looked like she hadn't slept. Tom, we need to talk. No, we don't. They fired us, both of us, Rick and me. Good. Tom, this is insane. You're destroying our lives over a mistake. Your mistake. Your consequences. What about Amelia's tuition? What about the mortgage? What about our future? What about our marriage vows? What about our family? What about the trust you destroyed? She started crying again. I made a mistake. I'm sorry, but we can fix this if you'll just stop this campaign of revenge. This isn't revenge, Martha. This is accountability. For 23 years, you've lived in a world where your actions didn't have consequences, where you could do whatever you wanted and I'd just accept it. That world doesn't exist anymore. So what happens now? Now you get to find out what life is like when people know who you really are. And Rick gets to find out what it's like to be the other man in a town where everyone knows his business. Martha wiped her eyes with a tissue. The kids hate me. The kids are disappointed in you. There's a difference. Ross won't return my calls. Amelia says she's ashamed of me. Then maybe you should think about why that is. I never meant for any of this to happen. You meant for all of it to happen, Martha. You just didn't mean to get caught. She looked around our kitchen, at the family photos, the coffee maker we'd bought together, the table where we'd shared thousands of meals. I loved you, Tom. I still love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love having a backup plan. You love knowing there's someone who'll forgive you no matter what you do. But you don't love me. That's not true. If you loved me, you wouldn't have betrayed me. If you loved our family, you wouldn't have risked destroying it for a few months of excitement with a man who's already proven he can't be trusted. I stood up and walked to the door. I want you out of this house by the end of the week. Take whatever you want, but don't take anything that belongs to the kids. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. After she left, I called my lawyer. How did it go? He asked. Better than expected. She's finally starting to understand that actions have consequences. And Rick? Rick's discovering that being the other man isn't as glamorous when everyone knows about it. Any regrets? I thought about that for a moment. No, for the first time in years, I feel like I'm in control of my own life. What's next? Next, I rebuild. But this time, I do it on my own terms. .. Epilogue 6 months later. I was working under the hood of a classic Mustang when Frank walked into my shop. How's business? He asked. Good. Better than good, actually. It was true. Word had gotten around about what Martha had done, and somehow that had translated into more customers. Maybe people respected a man who fought back. Maybe they just felt sorry for me. Either way, I wasn't complaining. You look different, Frank observed. Different how? Lighter. Like you're not carrying the weight of the world anymore. He was right. I felt lighter, freer, like I'd been holding my breath for years and could finally exhale. Martha called me yesterday, I said. Yeah? What did she want? To tell me she and Rick broke up. Apparently he wasn't interested in a long-term relationship with an unemployed woman with baggage. Frank snorted. Shocking. She wanted to know if we could try again, if I'd consider counseling. What did you tell her? I told her that some things can't be fixed. Some trust can't be rebuilt. Some bridges can't be uncrossed. How did she take it? About as well as you'd expect. I closed the hood of the Mustang and wiped my hands on a rag. You know what's funny, Frank? I spent months thinking about revenge, planning how to hurt her the way she hurt me. But in the end, the best revenge was just telling the truth. Just making sure everyone knew who she really was. And now I'm free. Free to build the life I actually want instead of the life I thought I was supposed to want. Frank smiled. Sounds like you won. Yeah, I said, looking around my shop, my domain, my kingdom, my fresh start. I think I did. That evening, I had dinner with Ross and Amelia. They'd both been struggling with their mother's betrayal, but they were starting to heal. Starting to understand that families can survive even the worst betrayals if the people in them are willing to face the truth. Dad, Amelia said as we finished dessert, I'm sorry I waited so long to give you that recording. Why did you wait? Because I hoped Mom would come to her senses on her own. I hoped she'd end it before you found out, but she didn't. No, she got deeper into it, and I realized that by staying quiet, I was helping her hurt you. You did the right thing, sweetheart. It doesn't feel like the right thing. It feels like I destroyed our family. Your mother destroyed our family. You just made sure the truth came out. Ross reached across the table and squeezed his sister's hand. Dad's right. Mom made her choices. We all just had to live with the consequences. What happens now? Amelia asked. Now we build something new, something better, something based on honesty instead of lies. Without Mom? Your mother will always be your mother. But she's not my wife anymore. And that's okay. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is let them go. After the kids left, I sat in my kitchen with a beer and thought about the past year, about the man I'd been and the man I'd become, about the marriage I'd lost and the life I'd gained. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Tom, this is Linda, Rick's ex-wife. I heard about what happened with Martha and Rick. I just wanted you to know that you did the right thing. Rick will do this again, to someone else. But at least now people know what he's capable of. Thank you for having the courage to tell the truth. I smiled and deleted the message. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. The next morning, I woke up early and went to Frank's gym. I worked the heavy bag for an hour, pushing myself harder than I had in months. Each punch was a celebration. Each combination was a declaration of independence. When I finished, Frank was waiting for me with a towel and a bottle of water. You know, he said, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. About telling the truth being the best revenge. Yeah? I think you're right. But I also think there's something even better than revenge. What's that? Living well, building something good, being happy. I looked around the gym, at the young fighters training for their next match, at the older guys like me working off their frustrations, at the community that had formed around Frank's simple philosophy of hard work and honest effort. You're right, I said. Revenge was just the beginning. Now comes the good part. What's the good part? The part where I get to be myself again. The part where I don't have to apologize for who I am or pretend to be someone I'm not. The part where I get to build a life that actually makes me happy. Frank smiled. Sounds like a plan. It is a plan. And for the first time in years, it's my plan. I showered, changed, and drove to my shop. I had a full day of work ahead of me. Cars to fix, customers to serve, a business to run. My business, my rules, my life. As I unlocked the door and turned on the lights, I thought about Martha and Rick. They were probably somewhere across town, dealing with the consequences of their choices. Martha was living in a small apartment, working at a job that paid half what she used to make. Rick had left town entirely, moving to another state where his reputation hadn't followed him yet. I didn't feel sorry for them. I didn't feel angry at them anymore either. I just felt free. Free to be the man I was meant to be. Free to build the life I actually wanted. Free to love someone who would love me back without reservation or betrayal. Someday, maybe I'd find that someone. Or maybe I wouldn't. Either way, I'd be okay. Because I'd learned something important over the past year. The most important relationship you can have is the one you have with yourself. And for the first time in decades, I actually liked the man I saw in the mirror. That man was honest. That man was strong. That man didn't accept betrayal or make excuses for people who hurt him. That man had won, and he was just getting started.